Wow, must have stuffed that under her mattress since the war. That's what a bank clerk muttered, as a young woman quietly requested to withdraw $500 in cash. The teller chuckled. So did the couple behind her. She didn't flinch, didn't explain. Just folded the bills carefully, placed them in a small leather pouch, and walked out. 6 minutes later, the bank manager looked up as a military convoy rolled in, blocking the lot, and a full-bird colonel stepped out asking, "Where's the woman in the blue hat?" If you believe quiet dignity deserves loud recognition, comment respect below. Rachel Quinn stood in line at Riverside Trust, her worn blue baseball cap pulled low over tired eyes. The morning light through tall windows cast long shadows across the marble floor. She clutched a small leather pouch, its edges frayed from years of handling. 3 people ahead, 2, 1. When her turn came, Rachel approached counter 6, with measured steps. The teller, young manicured nails tapping impatiently, glanced up with practiced indifference. "How can I help you today?" Her plastic smile never reached her eyes. "I'd like to withdraw $500, please, in 20s. Rachel's voice was soft but clear, like someone accustomed to being heard without shouting. The teller's eyebrow arched dramatically. "That's kind of a lot to take in cash. Everything okay?" Behind Rachel, a man in an expensive suit shifted his weight, sighing loudly enough to announce his inconvenience to everyone within earshot. "Yes, thank you. I just need to deliver it personally." Rachel slid her ID across the counter. Her hands, calloused strong, betrayed a life of purpose. The teller examined the license, then Rachel, then the license again. With a subtle eye roll, she turned to her computer, checking her savings. "Checking, please." As the teller processed the transaction, she leaned slightly toward her colleague at the next station. Old school types, probably paying off a used couch. The whisper wasn't meant to be private. Her colleague snickered, or hiding it from the IRS. The suited man behind Rachel chimed in his voice, caring deliberately. "She looks like she lives in that hoodie. Hope she can afford the ATM fee." A woman beside him laughed, covering her mouth with manicured fingers. Rachel stood motionless. Her expression revealed nothing, a practiced stillness that went unrecognized by everyone watching. The machine word, $500 in crisp 20s, emerged. "Would you like an envelope?" The teller's tone suggested the question was a courtesy she didn't expect to be accepted. "No, thank you." Rachel took the bills, and with deliberate precision folded each one identically. Once lengthwise, once across, before tucking them into the leather pouch. Her movements were economical, rehearsed like a ritual performed countless times. No one noticed the small metal impression embossed on the pouch's worn leather. She nodded once to the teller, turned, and walked toward the exit. Her posture remained straight, shoulders set, a silhouette that might have seemed familiar to more observant eyes. Outside, Rachel paused on the steps. She checked her phone, noted the time, and walked to the far corner of the parking lot. Inside, the bank returned to its rhythm. The teller already forgetting the woman in the blue hat, now serving the impatient man in the suit. Through the large windows, no one noticed Rachel standing at attention, waiting. No one noticed her checking her watch. No one noticed the first distant rumble of heavy engines approaching. The bank manager, Howard Ramsey, 43, with thinning hair and thickening authority, noticed her first. A solitary figure standing at the edge of the parking lot, motionless amid the bustle of midday banking. "Who's that?" he asked, pointing through his office window. His assistant peered out. "Some woman came in earlier," with droogish Dennis frown. "Standing there like that, tell security to keep an eye. It looks weird." Inside, the morning tellers were changing shifts, laughing as they recounted their more memorable customers. "And then this woman, totally looks homeless, wants 500 in Tosh." The teller mimicked Rachel's serious expression to scattered laughter. "Why not Venmo, like a normal person?" Someone called out. "I bet she's waiting for her drug dealer." Another joked. "Watch her get robbed by a squirrel." More laughter. Through the windows they occasionally glanced at Rachel, still standing alone. Some pointed, some shook their heads. None approached. Security guard Ray Michaels, retired county sheriff's deputy, kept his eyes on her, hand resting near his radio. "Probably nothing," he muttered to himself, "but you never know these days." 5 minutes stretched to 10, then a deep rumble in the distance. First came the motorcycle escorts, 2 military police on gleaming machines, lights flashing without sirens. They took positions at both entrances to the parking lot. Next, 2 matte green Humvees rolled in, followed by a black SUV with government plates. The convoy completed with a covered utility vehicle tarp strapped tight over its contents. The vehicles moved with precision, forming a perfect blockade across the lot's main thoroughfare. Inside the bank, all activity ceased. "Oh my God," someone whispered. "Is this a raid? Did someone hit the panic button? Are we being robbed?" Howard Ramsey rushed from his office. Nobody moved. "Security, what's happening?" Ray shook his head, baffled. "Military, sir, not police. I don't know what's going on." From the black SUV emerged a figure that commanded immediate attention. A full-bird colonel in dress uniform, chest adorned with combat medals and service ribbons, silver gray hair cut regulations short, face weathered by decisions that had cost lives. He scanned the lot, spotted Rachel, and moved toward her with purposeful strides. Every window in the bank now framed employees' and customers' faces pressed against glass watching the scene unfold. The colonel stopped before Rachel. She didn't salute civilian clothes, civilian setting, but her posture shifted subtly straighter, stronger, a shadow of military bearing impossible to disguise. "Lieutenant Quinn," his voice carried across the suddenly silent parking lot. "We received your request." Inside, the teller who had served Rachel gasped audibly. "Lieutenant." Outside, Rachel opened her leather pouch. The folded bills emerged still crisp, still precisely aligned. Beneath them, a folded note, which she handed over with the money. "This is for the memorial wall, sir." Her voice no longer soft but clear, commanding, carried to the watchers at the windows. "It has to come from me in person." The colonel unfolded the note, read silently. For a moment his composure cracked, a tightening around the eyes, a muscle working in his jaw. Then he stood at attention, saluted her. Rachel returned the salute, perfect form, muscle memory that transcended her civilian clothes. Howard Ramsey burst through the bank's double doors, security trailing behind. "What's going on here? This is private property. You can't just stand down civilian." And the colonel didn't raise his voice, didn't even look away from Rachel. Yet Dennis fell silent immediately. From the Humvees, 6 soldiers emerged, combat veterans, all their bearing unmistakable. They formed a loose semicircle behind their colonel. One approached Rachel, extended his hand. "Staff Sergeant Miller." "Ma'am, I served with Corporal Rourke on his last tour. He spoke of you often." Rachel's composure wavered for the first time, a brief shimmer of emotion crossing her features before she regained control. "He was the best of us," she said simply. Inside the bank, the teller who had mocked Rachel sank into a chair, face burning with shame. Outside, the colonel carefully placed the money and note into a ceremonial box carried forward by another soldier. "Lieutenant Quinn," he announced loud enough for all to hear, "your request has been honored. The convoy is here to transport materials for the memorial. Would you care to inspect?" A soldier opened the utility vehicle's rear doors. Inside, construction materials, tools, and a single-frame blueprint. The blueprint title visible to all, Fort Turner Memorial Gym Wall, in honor of Corporal Liam Rourke. The colonel held the leather pouch aloft, addressing not just Rachel, but the growing crowd of onlookers spilling from the bank. "Lieutenant Rachel Quinn served 3 tours with the 3rd Reconnaissance Battalion, earned 2 Purple Hearts and a Silver Star. The kind of soldier who leads from the front." His voice, a commander's voice, carried across the hushed parking lot. "But today, she's not here as Lieutenant she's here as Liam Rourke's friend." He opened the pouch again, extracting the note, and with Rachel's slight nod of permission, read aloud, "In honor of Corporal Liam Rourke, who never made it home, this 500 has built his favorite wall, the gym wall, where we may others find strength where he found purpose." The colonel's voice caught almost imperceptibly. "Signed, Lieutenant E. Quinn, 3rd Recon." Silence hung heavy in the air. From the bank entrance, Howard Ramsey stepped forward hesitantly. "I had no idea she was military. We would..." The colonel cut him off with a sharp gesture. "You didn't need to know. You just needed to treat her with respect." A young soldier approached with a small ceremonial case. The colonel placed the pouch inside, handling it with the reverence usually reserved for medals of valor. "The gym at Fort Turner trains our newest recruits," he explained, his voice softening. "Corporal Rourke built the original climbing wall himself, said it taught determination better than any drill instructor." He turned to Rachel. "The new wall will be 3 times larger. His name will be on the cornerstone." Rachel nodded, once her composure intact, but her eyes bright with unshed tears. "He would have hated the attention," she said quietly, "but loved the wall." A ghost of a smile crossed her face, the first any of them had seen. The teller who had mocked Rachel pushed through the crowd, her face flushed with shame. "I'm so sorry," she began. "I didn't realize." Don't apologize because I served, Rachel interrupted gently. We're all just people trying to get through the day. She glanced toward the convoy, though some days are harder than others. The colonel checked his watch. We've got a schedule to keep, Lieutenant. The materials need to be at Fort Turner by 1600 hours. Rachel straightened. Thank you for meeting me here, sir. It wasn't necessary. On the contrary, he replied. Some promises deserve witnesses. He turned to address the crowd. Corporal Rourke's final letter requested that if anything happened to him, his savings should build something lasting. Lieutenant Quinn has carried out that mission faithfully. The colonel extended his hand to Rachel. Your duty is complete, Lieutenant. She shook it firmly, relief visible in the slight lowering of her shoulders as she turned to leave the soldiers as one snapped to attention. Rachel paused, then continued walking toward the sidewalk. No fanfare, no further explanation, just a quiet exit as dignified as her entrance had been. When she reached the curb, the convoy doors slammed shut in perfect unison, a mechanical salute that echoed across the lot. By evening, the story was everywhere. Bank staff left. Then the military convoy came, veteran's final wish fulfilled by fellow soldier, the woman in the blue hat, a promise kept. Rachel's note with name redacted was shared across veterans' social media pages, prompting an outpouring of support. Dozens of donors offered to match the $500. By week's end, the Dean Memorial Fund had raised over $50,000. The climbing wall became a full gymnasium renovation. On its dedication day, beneath Corporal Rourke's photograph, a simple plaque read, "For Liam, she never forgot," and in smaller letters below, "From $500 and a promise." Rachel Quinn never returned to Riverside Trust. She continued her civilian life, teaching physical education at Westside High School, volunteering weekends with at-risk youth, living simply in a one-bedroom apartment, adorned with few possessions, but many books. Her name remained conspicuously absent from the headlines and fundraising campaigns her actions had inspired. Local reporters sought interviews, military publications requested features. She declined them all with the same quiet firmness she'd shown at the bank. It was Liam's story, she told the one persistent journalist who tracked her down, not mine. But though Rachel sought no recognition, her actions reverberated. The Blue Hat Fund was established, a military-backed initiative supporting veteran projects, too small for government funding, but too meaningful to ignore. Gym equipment for VA hospital, musical instruments for therapy programs, community gardens on former baselands. Its origin story printed on every brochure, started by one young woman, one folded bill, one salute. 6 months after the bank incident, Fort Turner held its first climbing competition on the newly christened Dean Wall. Recruits who had never known Corporal Rourke challenged themselves on its heights, unknowingly fulfilling his belief that vertical challenges build horizontal bonds. On Veterans Day, a group of those recruits, now graduates, arrived at Westside High School's gymnasium. After hours, they found Rachel repairing basketball nets, blue baseball caps, still worn but now accompanied by the school's coaching whistle. Their leader, a young woman barely 20, carried a polished wooden shadow box. Lieutenant Quinn permission to present a gift. Rachel straightened, recognizing the bearing before the uniform. I'm not a lieutenant anymore, just Miss Quinn will do. With respect, ma'am. Some ranks are carried longer than they're worn. She presented the shadow box. Inside, one leather pouch, identical to Rachel's original, one folded $20 bill, an engraved brass plate bearing the words, "We remember the way you did," directly. Rachel accepted it with steady hands. Thank you. He would have been proud of all of you. The young soldiers departed without ceremony, understanding, as only those who serve can, the value of brief moments and lasting impact. At Riverside, trust changes came too. The teller who had mocked Rachel, Vanessa Lowe, left banking entirely. After 4 months of soul-searching, she applied to work at Veterans United, a military credit union. Now she begins each new employee orientation with a story. There was a woman in a blue hat, she tells them. She taught me the most important lesson in finance has nothing to do with money. Her closing words to every training class: don't judge the pouch. You never know what's inside. And somewhere on a gym wall, where young soldiers find their strength, a single photograph watches over them all. Not of medals, not of combat, just two friends, Rachel and Liam, smiling beside a half-built climbing wall. Below it, a handwritten note in a frame: some debts can only be repaid in person. Subscribe to Steelheart Stories if you believe quiet actions echo louder than any uniform ever could. Long after the dedication, the name Rachel Quinn faded from the headlines, but in the quiet echoes of gym walls, the laughter of children, and the sweat of new recruits, her act of devotion lived on. In silence, Some stories roar the loudest,